everybody, welcome back to Pagan's Witchy Corner. My name is Pagan, and I am joined by a wonderful guest that you've already heard once on my show, and that's Storm Faerywolf. He is the author of The Witch's Name and Satyr's Kiss, which is now officially out. You've heard him talk all about these great books. He's also the author of many other amazing books. All the links will be in the show description, so you guys can check those out. But Storm, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm really glad to be here.
Well, for those who are paying attention to the news, today is the 24th of June, and it is a tragically historic day for Americans, especially American women and anybody that has a uterus. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're mostly going to talk about how to protect our LGBTQ friends and some magical activism, and obviously we're going to talk about Storm's books as well. But who knew that your book Satyr's Kiss was going to be such an amazing kind of active revolution this year when it came out? That's kind of crazy to think about, actually.
Yeah, really weird to me. I mean, today seems very surreal, even though we knew
Yes.
that this was coming. Obviously, since the memo got leaked, what was it, a couple months ago, we knew that this day was coming, but it somehow just is an extra insult that it's happening not only during Pride Month, but really kind of Pride Week, kind of coming up on the anniversary, of the Stonewall riots, which is what we celebrate every year, for Pride. And this isn't just an attack on women, as if that isn't bad enough. Like you said, it's an attack on women. It's an attack on anyone with a uterus, anyone who is assigned female at birth. This is an attack. This is basically saying you are now just legal incubators. And that, I mean, I'm not even exaggerating.
No, that is not an exaggeration. That is an honest fact. And it's a disturbing and disgusting fact at that. But
absolutely. I mean, everyone has been saying, oh, this could never happen here. We see it happen elsewhere, but it can never happen here. And it's happening right now. It's been happening. But if this doesn't wake people up, what the hell is it going to take? This is a complete theocratic takeover of the United States government. This is what this is.
Yes.
This is based in religion and nothing else, because it's just the evangelical Christian sect that believes that life starts at conception. Nobody believed that before. Even, their own Bible, didn't say that. That wasn't really something that happened until really recent, history.
Yeah.
So this is a theocratic takeover. I see elements of the 1978, Islamic revolution in Iran, in which they had, people had more rights, before then. And then it was a theocratic takeover. And suddenly rights were stripped away from women, from other people. And even today, I mean, we've said, oh, once they get rid of Roe v. Wade, they're coming after, marriage equality, and they're coming after, just queer people in general. And Clarence Thomas literally said as much in his consenting opinion today. He says we need to look at these other rulings. And that's specifically what these other rulings are.
Yes.
So no one should be quiet.
No.
Today is a day for outrage. Today is a day to stand up. We need everybody everywhere. We need a general strike.
Yes,
we need people to stop going to work. We need people to stand up. I mean, yes, continue to vote, continue to send letters, but we need to get outside. We need to be in the streets. This shall not stand. Gun owners have more rights than women and people assigned female at birth. That is just the law now.
It is. And, it's interesting that you say that, because I am actually a gun owner myself, despite being a Democrat. And my gun has more rights than I do right now, which is the most disturbing fact ever. The interesting thing that, we also talk about is it has been mentioned several times across social media today. But, you think about all of the Islamic kind of terrorists like ISIS and stuff like that. They allow abortion, just for the record. what's happening right now in this country is worse than what ISIS and the Taliban are doing in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And
At least
that
in
is
this
the
regard. Yeah.
scariest thing to think about. Yes, in this regard, that is one of the scariest things to think about, that we are supposed to be this free nation, and we're supposed to be. America's never been the greatest country on the earth. We just like to say that we
No,
are, but
no.
we never have been. But, we were one of the greats for quite a while. And now we are worse than the Taliban and ISIS, which,
Yeah.
normally
Yeah.
this is a witchcraft kind of podcast, but today we're going to talk a little more on the political side. And if you're not here for the politics, I totally understand, but I hope that you do stay around for the politics today, because of the fact that this affects everybody ultimately.
Right.
It
That's
doesn't just
something too.
affect men or
That's something
women.
too that I want to talk about is
Mm-hmm.
is just the approach of politics. I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm not political," or I don't want to be political, and I understand that, but I really have to say that is such a privileged statement.
Oh yeah.
When somebody says, "Oh, I'm not political," what you're saying is you don't want to be involved in decisions that are literally affecting people's lives, that are taking people's lives. I get it. It would be so much easier just to stick our heads in the sand and pretend it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
Or even to say that, like, oh, well, it doesn't affect me. Guess what? It does affect you. Even if you are a man, this affects you, because
Yes.
this affects all of society. This is, even if we just want to talk like financials, which I hate to talk about financials, but it seems like that's all some people understand. This is going to cost us all so much more,
Yeah.
because there's going to be, not only just the legal challenges, which will be legion, but there's also going to be, people who are seeking abortions in places that really shouldn't be offering them.
Mm-hmm.
We had a time in our country where people were dying from these back alley abortions.
It wasn't that
Abortions
long
are not
ago
going to
either.
stop.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago.
No.
Talk to our mothers. It's in their living memory. I mean, I think Roe v. Wade became law of the land, I want to say in 1973.
I think
And
that's right.
so
Yeah.
I was what? So I was 2 years old. So really all of my conscious life, this has been a protection that women have had,
Mm-hmm.
although it's been under attack by the religious right forever, and here we are. This is like just the circumstance is so incredible to me, that our former president, who literally fueled an attempted insurrection, and we're kind of going through that shadow right now.
Yeah.
But he installed 3 religious whack jobs to our quote unquote Supreme Court, and even prior to that, the Republicans prevented a legitimate justice from being appointed.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a religious takeover. This is
Yes.
nothing but a religious takeover. And what's even worse, if it is worse, it feels worse, is that most of the Republicans don't even believe in it that way.
No.
Most of the Republican Congress people, they're fine. They're not going to be touched. They've got enough money. If you have money, you can always get an abortion for your mistress, because that's the Republican way, right?
Yep.
That's always been that way. But what we're talking about is poor people. Poor people will not have access to this life-affirming healthcare. And don't even start with me like, oh, it's killing babies. No, it's not. It's undifferentiated cells. Go back to school. You sound
As
like an idiot.
somebody who has given birth to a child, I can tell you wholeheartedly that yes, you do become an incubator for cells up until about 20-ish, 23 weeks, somewhere in that range. And that's really the only time they can start to detect the heartbeat. They can start to detect
Right.
it a little bit before then, but it's not always accurate. So that's
Yeah,
when
and it's
they
not exactly a heart yet.
yeah, it's not exactly a
That's
heart. It's actually, I believe is what my OB told me. He said, this isn't technically the heartbeat. He said, it's actually the electrical impulses that it's picking up.
right. It'll become a heartbeat later.
Yes.
But it's not developed.
Mm-hmm.
And so really we're being held hostage by some undifferentiated cells.
Mm-hmm.
But really it's a religious worldview,
It
and it's
is.
a religious worldview that has no place in a civilized society. But here we are. The Supreme Court also, just leading up to this, I forget which state, but didn't they just rule that public funds can go to private religious schools?
That was Maine, I
Which
believe.
I think it was Maine.
And
Yeah.
then, obviously they also just did the gun law from New York, which basically gives more
Mm-hmm.
access to guns, which we're still dealing with all of the aftermath of all of the mass
Right.
shootings, but
Yeah.
especially the most tragic one recently,
These
which
people
was
have no right
Uvalde.
to call themselves, these people have no right to call themselves pro-life.
No.
They
And
are pro-death. They are part of a death cult. This is
yes,
not okay. This shall not
absolutely.
stand.
And the interesting thing is too, my husband said that he's like every pagan of any other religion other than Christianity should file a religious discrimination suit against the United States government.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm like,
Absolutely.
this is huge. We should do this, but I said I don't even know where to begin to start to do that. I would need somebody who is capable of doing that. I'm like, I don't even know
I
where
hear
to
you.
start.
I don't know.
But yeah, this is something that is affecting everybody else's lives. And especially we live in a country where we are prided on freedom of religion. Even Christianities will say freedom of religion, but they don't want they want freedom for their religion, but nobody else's. And
Right.
so, as
We need
pagans and
freedom from religion.
right, as pagans and witches, this severely affects us because then it diminishes our voice and it diminishes even our power because our power comes from our voice. So much of it does. And so we
Absolutely.
are in such a crazy state right now that it's like, how do you go from being basically a powerful witch, which I would say all of us are if you're practicing, whether you're starting out or you've been practicing forever, it doesn't matter. You have power. And the point is, right now, this theocratic government is trying to strip that power away from you. Even though they can't physically touch it, they're still trying to strip it away from you. And
Right.
how do we defend ourselves from that? How do we say, no, you can't have this. This is mine. And we've been fighting this for aeons, literally. For years and centuries, we have seen this, and it has unfortunately stemmed from a lot of puritanical kind of Christian religions. We see this with witch
Absolutely.
trials. We see this, and I see witch trials exclusively because of the fact that they weren't just Salem. There have been witch trials in Africa, in Europe, in
Yes.
everywhere. And they're still trying to force out the other religions. Why? What is our religion doing to hurt them? Is it hurting them? No. Could it? Potentially, if we hex them enough. But, ultimately, how are we allowed to have a voice at that point? And that is a question that, as an audience, I really hope that right now you're asking this of yourself. And I know it's a hard day, and I know it's going to be a hard month. Hell, it's going to be a hard year or years to come because this is going to
Right.
be an uphill battle. And I know that all of us are going to be extremely exhausted. And we're exhausted now. We don't want to keep fighting, but we have to because otherwise we just let them win.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and this is where also we have to remember, yes, we need to be activists, even people that weren't considering themselves to be activists. Um, we have to be activists on some level. That doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean all of us have to get out in the streets, although a lot more of us do.
Yeah.
You know, I remember my grandmother before she died, and she died in 2001, right? So it was a much different time. But in the shadow of the 2000 United States presidential election, which of course, the Supreme Court decided to assign a president at that time, stopped the count in Florida, as I recall. And we all felt that we were disenfranchised. Once again, we have the situation where, the person who won the popular vote lost the electoral college,
That
and
was
really
Al
based
Gore that
on
won, right?
Al Gore won the popular vote,
Okay. That's what I
but he
thought.
lost the
I was
electoral
young back then,
college.
so I was still in high
And
school.
yeah, it was a while ago. It was a while ago. And so, but the Supreme Court put an end to it. There was recounts going on, and it's quite possible that Gore would have actually won the electoral college had the recounts been continuing, because that was the trend. He was getting more votes. But the Republicans did their mock outrage. All these people showed up at like the voting centers and were protesting. And then later on, looking at the video of those protests, we found that, oh, it was a bunch of actual like Republican operatives. It wasn't just the average person on the street. It was just seated with all these like Republican higher ups who were basically in their own way posing as just the regular person who was just outraged. It was a mock outrage. It was political. It was political theater. And it was a way to wrest power away from the majority. And that's when I really felt that like our system was broken. And I've always felt that our system was broken. And we have an opportunity, certainly to fix things, because that's what we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
We can't become complacent. We've been complacent too long, and on the left, we love dividing ourselves against ourselves and pointing the finger and saying, you're not perfect enough and we're going to cancel you. And, we need to get over that right now. We can fight later amongst ourselves, but right now we need to unify, because tell you what, the right is unified, and that's how they're getting all this done. We've been under the false impression that people are going to do the right thing. But look at the former guy, so many people banded with him to do the wrong thing. And our system wasn't designed for that. We have checks and balances, but they've been eroded, over the years. We don't even have factual news. Fox News is allowed to call themselves news. It's Republican propaganda.
It is propaganda.
It is absolutely propaganda. In fact, they even argued in court when they were being sued that no one should take them seriously as news. They're entertainment. And that was how they were able to get out of being sued. They said, well, we're not actually news. We're entertainment. No one should take Tucker Carlson seriously. That's true. No one should, but people do.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are. And it's not stopping here, because even I know so many of my activist friends have been saying like, okay, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, then they're coming for the queers next. And that's something that a lot of people will say, first they came for this and then they came for that. And I said nothing, right? That famous poem that I'm so mad I'm blocking out right now. But, but this is absolutely true. Clarence Thomas today, in his consenting opinion, said we should look at these very specific rulings, the rulings that decriminalized homosexuality, the anti-sodomy laws that were thrown out in Texas on a federal level. That needs to be looked at now, he said. And the ruling that gave us marriage equality, that needs to be looked at now. So it's not even just, we think they're going to do it. They have told us specifically they are. And so if you're a queer person today, you need to wake up and realize they are coming for us next.
Yes.
And first it'll be laws, and then it'll be camps. And it will happen if we don't stop it from happening.
And, there's a lot of people out there that are saying, well, why aren't the Democrats doing something? Why isn't Biden doing something? I think a big part of it is, too, that there is a lot of people who are in our government who their hands are kind of tied. And their hands are tied because we have let this go on for so long. And I'm not saying that it's a collective, like, oh, it's these people over here who didn't vote. That's part of it, but it's everybody, because so many of us for a long time have sat back by and gone, no, they're not actually going to do that.
Right.
And here we are.
That can't happen here in the land of the free.
I will admit, I was one of those people. About 2012 was when the veil kind of started thinning for me, and I'm like, something's not right here. This isn't okay. Right. And then 2016 happened, and I said, just before, after, that Hillary had lost, I said, mark my words, we're going to have some sort of civil war.
Yep.
I said, they're going to start stripping rights away from people. I said, it's going to get really ugly. They're going to start hurting people, especially people of color. And then they're probably going to come after women.
And here we are.
Every single thing I said in 2016 has happened.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, especially with the 2016 election, I remember I took a selfie that day when the results came in, like the next day, and I was crying. And I took a selfie because I wanted to remember that feeling. I'm a Pisces, and I I do get off on emotions, and I love processing my emotions. But I was like, this is historical, and I need to remember this because it's so potent and powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I actually needed to share that with people, just to show like how broken I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a way to kind of like, I don't know, on a personal level, lessen my pain by sharing it, but also letting people know that, hey, I'm a human being, and this is really, I feel so strongly about this. And the reason I was crying is not because my team lost. I was crying because I knew this day would be the result of it.
Yes.
I knew that with the former guy coming in, that he was going to then be able to assign Supreme Court justices. I didn't realize he was going to be able to give 3 of them. But this is why I was fighting so hard for people to vote for Hillary. Not because I thought Hillary was our savior or she was like the best person for the job, but of the 2,
she was the best
it
person
was a
for the job.
no-brainer.
Yeah.
She was the best person for the job, again, of the 2. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter, going in. I'm definitely a socialist. I know that gets a lot of bad rap these days because people don't actually understand what socialism is, because we've never really seen socialism work that great before. But that's because it's humans, and humans corrupt whatever systems we have. That's why we need checks and balances.
Absolutely.
That's why we need governmental transparency. Are you seriously going to tell me that capitalism is so great? Look at today. This is horrible. I know, like, people from, I knew somebody from Venezuela who was just like, they were just like, oh, capitalism's so awesome, because of course they came from a failed socialist state.
Right.
And so, but they were so quick to denounce all of socialism, because of it. And I'm like, well, I actually think what we need is a form of hybrid government.
Yes.
We need a little of this, a little of that. And, but we need to affirm everyone's ability to exist and to have bodily autonomy, and to not have to be subject to somebody else's religion. And that's really what the United States is supposed to be built on. I still have this idea that the spirit of the United States is worth fighting for, but it has never manifested as the land of the free for everyone. It's always been the land of the free for some.
Yes, absolutely.
If you have money, if you're a white heterosexual male with money, there you go. And then, okay, maybe now some white women got some rights, but not all of them.
Nope. Today, no woman has rights.
Right.
We have lost a lot of our rights today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Except rich women will still be able to obtain an abortion. And it'll just be hush hush. There won't be any consequences for that. If there's consequences, it'll come in the term of fines. And what really opened my eyes was, I think I saw a meme a couple of years ago. And it was like, oh, crimes that are punishable by fines really just mean it's illegal only for poor people. And that's absolutely true. Oh my gosh. Unless somehow the fine was,
but it's so true.
But it's true.
Yeah.
Like, unless the fine was like a percentage of your net worth or something, then billionaires would be like, whoa, you know what I mean? If there was some way to like really gouge them, but like a person who's living, below the poverty line, if they get like, even like $100 ticket for, something like speeding or whatever, that's like their groceries for the week, and, but if a billionaire, gets that ticket, it's just like, that's loose change in the couch.
That's loose change in his pocket.
Right.
That doesn't even, he keeps a stack of $100 bills in the center console of his car because he's not worried about getting robbed.
Right. It's just whatever. That's just literal money to burn,
Yeah.
So it's really, we have a war on the poor.
Yes.
And, it kind of in my brain, I'm seeing like the rise of what has been called the prosperity gospels, in certain evangelical sectors. And this idea that like, oh, if you have money, that means that, God is smiling on you. Really? Have you seen the people that God has given money to? Really? They're the chosen people, huh? Really?
But the Bible also says money is the root of all evil.
Yeah, the love of money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
And it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than it is for, what is it, like a camel to go through the eye of a
Yeah,
needle.
the camel to go through the eye of a needle. You
But
know,
all
and
of this is cherry picking.
yeah.
They cherry pick everything they want. Because also in early Christianity and in Judaism, and going back to like the abortion issue, abortion was totally allowed.
Yeah.
And the idea, the life, the spirit, wasn't believed to come into the baby until the quickening, when a woman could feel the baby moving. Then it was considered a
Yes.
life.
And
in some religions, it's actually at the moment of birth. In some, it's like 3 days after birth, whatever. And so, but this is unprecedented, this idea that it starts at conception. And I mean, we don't need more people. But this is another thing, and this is how it ties into racism as well. This whole idea of the white replacement theory, that is being bandied about now. Even Tucker Carlson has promoted this insane idea. But this idea that white people are being replaced, and now we have low birth numbers of white people, and this is concerning. And so this is why also that they want to force people, to give birth. So they want white people to have more babies. And they also want poor people to have more babies because they're not going to be able to afford the care that they need. And there's going to be high levels of death. And from their perspective, that's a win-win.
It is absolutely a terrifying thing to think about. And we could sit here and debate about the, Christianity and all of the verses and all the stuff that talks about this. But the point is, these people are still the ones that are sitting here going, oh, yeah, well, if you're a person of color, too bad. If you're somebody who's LGBTQ that might have gotten potentially, that has a uterus, by the way, that might have gotten assaulted by somebody, yeah, that's, too bad. So sad.
Right. God's will.
God's will. You're going to have a baby. Congratulations, whether or not you wanted one. And that's the other thing that we, nobody wants to talk about this, but what happens to all these kids that are absolutely unwanted and they're forced into this world?
Right. And forced into poverty, into lives of poverty that, it just compounds the problems, the social problems that we already have. This is doing nothing to solve any problem. This is just a political ploy to consolidate power because the religious right is so embedded with the Republican Party that honestly, the Republican Party is beyond repair.
Yes.
In my view, they have shown their complete illegitimacy. And I feel that way. I mean, they've been fighting against my people for 40 years. I mean, literally putting it on the platform. There was, I don't know, just a couple of years ago, I can't remember his name now, but there was a Republican congressperson who literally was saying, we needed to round up all homosexuals and put us in camps. I'm like, do we learn nothing? That was done. That was done in World War II. Queer people were put in camps along with Jewish people.
Yep.
And, it was our Holocaust too. And in fact, even when those camps were liberated, a lot of times the queer people were put back into prison. So Jews got liberated, but queer people did not. And so we have to remember our history. And history will repeat itself if we don't stop it from repeating itself. And here we are.
Yes.
Today, we are at the precipice of democracy and of civilization. And I'm not saying this lightly.
No.
But we need to stand up and we need to engage our magic.
Yes.
And the first thing I would like to say about that is I know this makes me sound like, I'm doing the white light thing, but we have to start with self-care. We have to start there because we need to make sure that we're nourished and that we're aligned and that we're balanced, because it's too easy to just go off half-cocked. It's too easy to give in to despair. It's too easy to allow our anger to actually poison us or to burn us out from within. We have to have self-care. And so I want everyone listening to this to just take a breath. Just try to calm a little bit. We're going to do this. We're going to fight together. Okay. We're going to get through this together, but we have to join communities. We have to talk with one another. We have to respect other opinions and differences, not when those opinions or differences are in violation of our right to exist as human beings. But we need to stop looking for everyone to be perfect. And we need to look at what we can actually do in terms of the possible.
Yes.
Okay. Do not let the perfect be the enemy of the possible. We must move forward, but we have to start with self-care, and we have to reach out and help each other. And so I'm seeing people saying, hey, if you live in a red state, if you're a woman in a red state, hey, come here. If you need, like one of my initiates just posted on Twitter that he's in the Baltimore, DC area. And he was saying, hey, abortion was legal where he is, so if any woman wants to come, he will put them up, he will feed them, they can get their legal abortion and then they can stay with him as they recover. I know a lot more people are doing those types of acts as well. So we're also looking to the blue states right now to maybe set up some type of, like, dare I say, an underground railroad.
I was literally just thinking that.
Yeah, to help women from these red oppressive states to be able to go and get legal abortion and not be tracked. Another thing that I'm seeing is, people saying, hey, if you've been using like an online period tracker, now is the time to stop, delete it, delete your data, because the government absolutely will use that information against you. And some of the red states have already enacted laws.
They legally can now. Because
exactly.
Roe protected that. That was one of the things that Roe protected, was your privacy to use one of those apps. You are no longer protected from those apps. Delete it and get yourself a good old-fashioned calendar. And I saw best in a TikTok of when the time of the month when you have your salsa party, just put salsa on the calendar on whatever day it is. And then from about 10 to 14 days, then you put down your ovulation time. And that's the easiest way to do that. So if you're somebody who needs to track your cycle, that's how you do it, just for the record. It's actually pretty easy, but unfortunately it does take a lot more effort than our wonderful period trackers that we had. But yeah, those are not safe anymore, unfortunately.
No, it's absolutely not safe anymore. And I know some people were saying, oh, well, you could try this one because this one is advertising that it's encrypted and they'll keep your info private.
Doesn't matter.
Don't trust that.
It doesn't matter.
Don't trust that. It doesn't matter, because companies have shown time and time again that even under the most gentle pressure from the federal government, they will cave.
Yes.
And they will get, because that's the bottom line for them. It's money. And that's just the sad reality of it. And so another thing that I want to say about this, a lot of people say, oh my God, this is taking us back to the dark ages. I really want to say this, and I want everyone to hear me and really let it sink in. The dark ages or the Middle Ages, we'll use this as this example of like these horrible times. And now that, abortion is not protected, it's like bringing us back to the Middle Ages. No, abortion was legal in the Middle Ages.
Yes.
Let that sink in. Today is worse for women than it was for women in the Middle Ages.
Yes.
Let that sink in.
It's very interesting that, a lot of our history, especially reproductive and sexual history, is not taught to us. And I recently just had a conversation with Judica Isles, who actually told me about, I want to say, and this is just going off the top of my head, if you'd like to check out the most recent episode I did with her, the info is there. But I want to say it was the goddess, I'm going to butcher this, Sabella or Sabelle, who her priests and priestesses would actually do gender affirming care. They did trans surgeries in the temples.
Absolutely.
And that was thousands of years ago. So this is not a new subject. This is not something that it's like the Republicans and a lot of these Christian theocrats and extremists are wanting you to believe that this is recent and it is a threat to their religion and democracy. It is not recent. It is not new. It has been around forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, I've even heard this from some people ostensibly on the left, who have said to me, oh, well, you have to admit that, there's the numbers of transgender people are dramatically rising, this huge number. I can't remember the numbers off my head. I'm not a number person, but there are more people today who are identifying as queer, as transgender, really than ever before in modern society. And people are looking at that and saying, oh my God, these people are identifying as this thing now, and we have to stop it because, it's like you said, it's this threat to our society. And they would say, oh, well, you have to admit that more people are identifying this way than ever before. Well, yes, I do admit that more people are identifying this way than ever before. That doesn't mean that more people are that way. That just means that society had gotten to a point where more people felt comfortable being authentic.
Yes.
And being able to share who they actually are. But we, like you mentioned, we've had transgender people, or what we would call transgender people, for thousands of years. That term, of course, wasn't used back in ancient Rome. But you mentioned one of the priestesshoods of Cybele, the Galli, who would undergo ritual castration, and then they would live their lives as women. They would dress in women's clothing. They were also seen as what we might call a third gender. It was like closer to women than men in their society, but it was kind of a third gender. But that was, for the most part, accepted. That was also, that gave, men and women, cis men and women, an opportunity to explore gender in a way that didn't threaten their own status in society, and this was a sacred role, that was enacted. And then, of course, then the women who would live as men, so that they could, be the priests, of this as well. This is not new. This has been around since the beginning of people. And it's only now that it's really coming into the forefront of collective consciousness. And so, of course, we're struggling with it. And, but we have to keep struggling. We can't give in. Because if we give in, then it literally will become Nazi Germany. It literally will. We're like a shade away from that right now, people. Yeah. I can't say this enough.
No. And, it's interesting that Germany's government is actually putting in laws to make it easier to get abortions since this ruling came out.
Yeah, Germany is doing some stuff right.
Germany is fixing their stuff.
I will say I visited Germany a couple times, and so I'm certainly no expert, whatever, but I loved the people there. But I love the laws. They're doing some good stuff. No place is perfect, but they're doing some really good stuff. They have freedom of speech, and they have criminalized hate speech.
Yes.
And hate symbols. You cannot display, Nazi symbols in Germany today. That is illegal. And we need to have similar things here in the United States. I firmly believe we need to criminalize hate speech.
Yes.
When we have that preacher in Texas just recently who was preaching to his flock saying that, the Bible condemned homosexuality, and today in 2022, we should put all homosexuals in the United States on trial, line them all up against a wall and put a bullet in their head. That is hate speech. That is inciting violence. We know we're going to see more queer deaths as a result. That should not be protected under the First Amendment.
No, that should not be protected at all. There are so many things,
but obviously this SCOTUS is not our friend.
No.
And, and to me, they've shown their illegitimacy. We've been talking about, oh, well, there really is no limit to how many justices we can have. So we talked about adding more, liberal justices. Where? Why is that not happening? That should have happened before this. We knew this was coming. We need to fight for that. We need to get rid of the filibuster. We need to put more people on the Supreme Court, and we need to make DC a state. We need to make Puerto Rico a state. We need to give people a voice. And we have been so focused on taking that voice away. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the Democrats are perfect. I think they're inept. I'm a registered Democrat because, it's the viable option against the Republicans. The Republicans are pure evil. Their organization is pure evil. If you're listening to this and you're a Republican, you're giving your money to evil. And therefore you're perpetuating evil. I'm sorry. There's no such thing as a good Republican. Not anymore.
No.
Stop being Republican. Okay. Just stop. There's no excuse for it.
Yeah.
But the Democrats are inept.
Excuses for being a Republican too, saying, oh, well, it's this I do this because I want to be a gun owner. I'm a gun owner and I'm a registered Democrat, and I've been a registered Democrat for almost 20 years now, and I've been a gun owner my entire life. I will continue to probably always be a gun owner, but I also believe in sensible gun laws and all this other stuff, but that's a whole nother
Absolutely.
conversation. You can be both. You can
Yeah,
believe in sensible laws and still practice the things that you enjoy. It's okay. You
absolutely.
can do both, but you shouldn't do it at the expense of other people's rights or the expense of other people's livelihoods or their safety. So, that's one of those things. And many of you who listen to my show, I know this isn't our usual spiel that we do, but we can't sit back by and just hope for the best anymore. We have to have a voice.
No,
We have
no. I
to.
mean, we have to have hope, but we need to back that hope up with action.
Yes.
And the time for just sitting home is over. It's been over.
Mm-hmm.
And we all need to do something. We need to speak out like we're speaking out today.
Yes.
We do. I mean, some people can't get out there in the streets. There's lots of reasons. I've been out there. I've done protests and marches and the whole thing. I don't do them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I have other responsibilities, but I need to also realize that it's time. We need to do more than we've been doing. And, for some of us, we have platforms. I'm going to continue to use my platform, however modest it is,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to keep speaking up for what I feel is right. I've been
Absolutely.
demonized for it. I know I was really trying to get people to vote for Hillary, back in the day in 2016. And but really I was saying, well, just get out there and vote. That was the most thing. But I was like, vote, but don't vote for Trump. And there were people on the leftist pagan side that demonized me for it because they were the people who were also against Hillary. Oh, she's such a hawk. If she gets in there, we're going to be at war with Russia, all this kind of bullshit. And,
Fast forward a few years.
I know. And I saw like people were like, oh, well, it's just a thing. Like there were some people on the left that were literally saying, and I guess they believed that, oh, well, Trump would never get in. This was just a ploy to get Hillary elected. And look how that worked out for you. I literally in my mind have a list of all the people that said they could never vote for Hillary Clinton. And I recite that list like fucking Arya Stark. Those people are dead to me. But they could come back, if they want to own it and
Mm-hmm.
realize that they did something wrong, and if you want to fight with us, hey, I don't respect how you acted in the past because it helped pave the way to where we are now. But you know what? That has to be water under the bridge now because we have a bigger fight to fight right now and we need
Yes.
everyone together. So if you couldn't vote for her because of her emails, you know what? I don't want to hear about it, but you better come to the table now because it's needed now.
It's so funny just hearing the phrase of because of her emails and the state that we're in right now in this country, and it's like, wow, that is the most trivial statement ever.
No kidding.
And it's like because wow, I my brain literally cannot wrap around the fact of because of her
people
emails.
people using the phrase Benghazi like it's some like magical word like abracadabra, whatever, like, oh, that's going to change my mind. There were like, what was it, 14 hours of hearings that woman went through. There was
11
nothing.
straight hours without
And
breaks.
nothing. Yeah, exactly. She was a trooper. She is a trooper. She warned us. She was right about everything.
Yes. She was
everything.
She was absolutely correct about everything. But it kind of really does start if you're somebody who's never been involved in activism before, even magical activism, what are some of the ways that you would recommend people to get started in that regard? Other than starting with a calm, clear head. We all know we should start with a calm, clear head.
Yeah, self-care first. Self-care first, and also revisit self-care, right? Because it's really easy to burn out.
Oh, yes.
But I think we need to first do things that are self-empowering. So let's say you've never written a letter to your senator or congressperson before. Then that's something you need to do now. But you need to make that a magical act. So you need to ground and align before you do it. Light a candle for your success, that your voice may be heard. Write your letter, print it out, and then empower that paper,
Mm-hmm.
do energy work on it, pray, chant, scream, cry, put your energy into it. Let it be seen by the right people. May your words sway them, to bend toward justice. And then you mail that letter. That is a magical act. Whether you do it in a circle or not, depending on your tradition, use the tools that you have. But remember that our mundane acts are magical. Every mundane act can be a carrier for magical intention. And so we need to do that. We need to write letters to the editor. We need to keep getting the voice out there. We need to keep getting our voice out there. Now, maybe not everybody's going to be able to write letters to the editor. Maybe you don't want to be exposed. Maybe you live in a red state and you actually might fear for your safety if people knew, that you were doing this, but you could still write your Congress people.
Mm-hmm.
You can still do that. If you have, an alt account on Twitter where people can't connect it to you, you can use that to talk about equality, to share stories and make that part of your magical work too. And then also I joked, I was talking to Kyle on his Twitch the other day, and I
Mm-hmm.
joked, half joke, I think it's turning into reality now, but I joked about needing to write the book Hexing for Self-Care. And now I think I might,
I
I don't
think you
know. I'm
should.
kind of,
I think you
I've got,
should.
it feels timely.
It sounds like a title that should already be out. Like we should be able to go buy
I
this
know.
today.
I just checked it too today because I was like, well, surely it's out there, And of course, now that I've said it, somebody's probably going to try to do it before me and whatever. But if they write the better book, then that's fine, as long as we get this, message out there. But I do think sometimes hexing can be a type of self-care. And hear me
Mm-hmm.
out. It can be very cathartic.
Yes.
I think that one of the only things that kept me sane during the Trump era was we had a puppet of him that we had on a special hexing altar, and he was handcuffed and in a cage. And then when he was doing his debates, we brought it out and we would just slap that thing against the coffee table. We'd punch it, we'd stomp on it, we passed it around, and we each, put all of our anger on it. And I'm not here to say like, oh yeah, that affected him or whatever.
It might
Maybe
have.
it helped. It might have.
Maybe
I
he
will
suddenly
say,
had a twinge in his head, and that's why he forgot words. You never
I
know.
mean, maybe it's totally exactly, but I'm not here to say, oh yeah, it was because of my spell that he got COVID, or whatever. Maybe I'm sure a lot of other witches and warlocks were working on that
I
too.
don't know how many
But
times I hexed Trump during his presidency, to be fair, but honestly,
exactly,
yeah, it is it because I would say I do agree with you on the fact that it is definitely cathartic. Because it gives you that release of I have done something,
exactly.
something,
Yes.
and
But
it's
don't
something
let
is always
that be
better than
the
nothing.
only, yeah, but don't let that be the only thing we do.
Yes.
Let that be something that we can do to kind of get that poison out of us. And hey, if it is like actually hexing Trump, then that's a great thing too. But usually on that level, like political magic on that level, it's very difficult because it's a huge wave that we're against. It's like we're trying to push the river upstream, and so it's more in terms of effective magic, affecting change outside of ourselves. It's really about how do I direct the flow of the river. It can't go back up against itself, but how could I adjust it here and there to maybe lead into some other places?
Mm-hmm.
And so again, that might be empowering your letters to your senator and your Congress people, showing up at local meetings. I think, grassroots political activism is where we need to be focusing.
Yes.
Yes, we need to think federal as well, obviously, but we need to work on grassroots stuff. That was another thing is I like a lot of the Green Party, stuff, but then they keep bringing up presidential candidates and they don't really have the experience or the roots. We need to elect more Green Party members to, city councils. We need more Green Party mayors. We need to be able to build a viable movement. We need a viable leftist movement, in the United States. And maybe the Democrats will finally get on board, but they're basically a shade left of center, today. And we need a left leaning political party.
Yes.
And that would be great if it was the Democrats, because they have the money behind it. But unfortunately, because they have all this money behind it, they're invested also in the status quo. But don't tell me that they're equal. Democrats and Republicans are not equal. They're not the same. But yes, the Democrats definitely have their problems, and we can't turn a blind eye to that. But right now, that's what we got. So I kind of feel like we need to use an already used phrase, we need to occupy the Democrats. We need to remind the Democrats that they need to be left-leaning. They need to focus on the workers,
Yes.
The individual rights of people. And that has to happen now.
Yes.
And so we have to show up. We have to go to meetings. We have to be informed. That doesn't mean we have to be on a constant news drip, all the time, like I was, in the Trump era. I was just addicted, to the news, and it wasn't healthy.
No.
And I finally had to pull myself away. And that's why, again, like hexing for self-care, we need to focus on self-care.
Yes.
But, there's some good books out there. There's witchcraft activism, would be a good thing. There are some resources out there that we should be familiarizing ourselves with.
Mm-hmm.
So was it Magic? Is it Magic for the Resistance?
Yes, by Michael H. Hughes.
Michael Hughes, yeah.
Michael H. or Michael M. Hughes, one of the two. I follow him on social media as well.
Michael M. Hughes. Michael M. Hughes. Magic for the Resistance: Rituals and Spells for Change. Really great book. Another one, Witchcraft Activism by David Salisbury.
Yes.
A toolkit for magical resistance. Those would be some great places to start, to see how can I actually move my magical practice into this space of activism. And the Salisbury book in particular is really about activism, because he's an activist.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as my activist friends know, burnout is real. And we can't really afford burnout, because then that means we're not being able to engage in the activism that we need to do. So we have to take breaks.
Yes.
So we can't allow our anger to poison us. We have to get away, go out, as they say, and touch grass. See if you can go out to nature for a while and release, and, remind yourself of what you're fighting for. We're not fighting because we hate something. We need to fight because we love something.
Yes. Another great book that you can add to your list as well is, it's more Norse pagan directed, but it is The Way of Ice and Fire by Ryan Smith. He is very much anti-fascism and a great activist. He's such a great human. Also, he'll be on the show in a few weeks, so stay tuned for that. Yes.
Awesome. Yes. I haven't read that book yet, but we follow each other. We know each other. I love his politics, and, definitely if you don't follow him, you should follow him. Follow Michael M. Hughes, follow David Salisbury. These are people that can also give us hope.
Yeah.
David Salisbury works in DC. And, so he does a lot of things, on the legal end of things, and so I'm often hearing about this stuff, from him first, and the work that he's doing to try to save us all. And, so these are people we also want to support. So even if you can't do something yourself, maybe you could support some of these people who are able to do more and put the word out there. So buy these books. If they have a Patreon, consider signing up for their Patreon, or giving them a donation, because they are doing this work at their own expense, and trying to make sure that all of us are able to live in a free society. And the work toward freedom isn't free.
No.
Especially in a capitalist society, so definitely consider just supporting the people that you see out there doing the good work.
Absolutely.
And that will go a long way as well.
Absolutely. Well, we do have a little bit of time left, but I do want to talk about, if SCOTUS is definitely aiming for our LGBTQ people, what are some magical protections that we can take to protect ourselves and to protect our friends out there? What can we do right now to help them?
I mean, that is tough, right? Because it's gonna be different for everybody. And we're in this weird precarious place now. I'm very open, but I'm able to be. I live in California. I
Mhm.
live in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's a type of liberal bubble. Is it perfect? No. I've experienced anti-queer violence, here in the Bay Area. I know people say, "Oh, really? I'm shocked." No, that totally has happened. And in fact, I feel like that's on the rise. Some of my friends have reported, some incidents, even more recently in the last, month or so, where it seems like people are really kind of, you know, that violence, and it's like the rock has been turned over, right? Now all the creepy crawlies are exposed to the sunlight. So, but if you are able to safely be out and be who you are, that's a incredible act of political magic right there, because visibility matters. Being able to see other people living authentically matters. So somebody maybe, sees someone who is out there and being open, and they themselves aren't able to be open, but maybe it gives them a little bit of hope. They see, oh, okay, I'm not alone,
Mhm.
and so that kind of elevates them a little bit, right? So that on that level alone. But even on the political end, just supporting the artists again. If there are television programs and movies, that depict queer people, in a positive light, you want to support those things. Share them on social media, if nothing else. Kind of get the word out. We need that visibility, but we need to do some common sense, just protection work. I would tell everybody, just like I tell my own students, do your cleansing work
Mhm.
every day.
Yes.
Make sure you're doing spiritual cleansing. Make sure that you are doing warding, protection work. Don't approach protection work from a space of fear, but approach it from a space of confidence.
Yes.
That you need to
Absolutely.
project this, that like, no, this energy is not coming to me. Protect your property. Definitely put in some wards. Maybe if you're not out and you don't want people to know who you are, maybe do warding that's about keeping you invisible, keeping you unnoticed,
Yes.
by
Yes.
people, because there's no shame if you have to live in the closet. There's no shame in that. No one should tell you you have to come out of the closet, unless you are a politician who is voting against queer rights. Then I think we all need to drag you out of that closet. But other than that, that is your choice, and that should be respected. But definitely working on um, work for protection and being able to connect with communities. I think that there is strength in numbers. We need to contact, if there's like a Rainbow Community Center, near you, get involved with different projects and organizations, like the Human Rights Campaign will have good resources. We need to connect with some of these organizations that have been fighting for our rights, and can give a lot more good information than I can, in terms of how to be protected legally as well. These are things that we
Yes.
have to think of. Obviously, that takes money, but sometimes we have to draw up certain contracts in order to protect our rights. Yeah, and if you can, this is a big privilege, but if you're able to move to a blue state, but not everybody can. That's expensive. I hate it
Yes.
when people say, "Oh, well, just move." Really? Just move. Oh,
Or
like
just
it's as
leave the
simple as that.
country.
Or just leave the country. Like
Yeah.
where am I going to go? Where
With
am I
what
going to
money? Are
go?
you paying for my trip out? Because if you are, great. I have a perfect place I would like to move, but yeah, you're gonna have to pay for me to
Right.
get there.
Exactly. What a place of privilege. Not all of us are Elon Musk. We can't just like on a whim, decide that we're going to leave the country or even leave the state. Obviously, though, if you can, then that's great. I'm hearing from lots of people that used to live in the United States, and they're telling me, I'm so glad that we left. That's something. For this country that claims to be the greatest in the world, which is laughable at best. Wow, so many people are leaving out of fear. That doesn't sound like the greatest country.
No.
This seems like the greatest failure. We are a failed state. This is late stage capitalism. It's crumbling. So we do have
Mhm.
to, we have to protect ourselves. And, but a lot of us are stuck. I'm fortunate. I like I said, I live in California. We own our house. Well, I guess the bank owns the house, but we're doing our thing. And so I feel fairly protected, but I'm under no illusions. They could take away my federal marriage like that. Everyone's like, oh, well, they're not going to be able to take rights away. No, I don't believe that at all. Of course, they will take rights away if they're given the opportunity. They're already taking rights away from women. Hello,
Yeah,
that's happened. That
they already did
happened.
it. They did
It
it
happened.
already. And you think that if you think for any minute that any single person in this country, unless you are the elite rich or the government, nobody's safe. Nobody is safe
No,
from what they are capable of doing. So
right,
please don't think that you're like, oh, that's not going to happen to me. And you might
right.
be, you know, and I'm not saying this derogatory. I'm saying this very observatory. And you might be white cis, and they might literally be like, oh yeah, no, I'm safe. I hate to tell you this, but nobody's safe.
No,
If they
nobody
took
is safe. And
rights away from women, nobody is safe.
exactly. And I know some people will say, "Oh, you're just being an alarmist." Well, you know what? It's
It's
time to
pretty
sound
fucking
the
alarming.
alarm. You want, when the fires happen, you sound an alarm. Well, it's burning. We're watching democracy burn. And so we need to call in that alarm. We need to start the alarm. We need to bring in the hoses, put this out, reconstruct what we can. But this is big. And again, like you mentioned before, now the eye goes towards queer people.
Yeah.
And when I wrote my latest book, The Satyr's Kiss, it's a manual of witchcraft and sex magic for queer men.
Hmm.
And I felt like to some degree it was a little bit revolutionary because I was really talking about sex magic in a way of like affirming that as a spiritual thing. If you wanted to incorporate sex into your religious celebrations and religious devotional work, here was a way that you could do that. And so in that regard, it felt revolutionary. To some degree. But then now with this today, and realizing, oh, they're coming for us now. Now I feel like, wow, this was timely. I think we need this out there to remind
Hmm.
people that, hey, queer people, you know, a lot of the straight bigots hate us, and we know that they hate us, but we better not internalize that. And because we've done that for too often, for generations, we've internalized that homophobia, we've internalized that hatred, and we've hated ourselves. And we've thought of ourselves as less than. And that has to go. That's gone. We need to center our queer experience in our spirituality. And that means also our sexuality, but that also means queer history. And so in The Satyr's Kiss, I talk about a lot of different figures from history who were queer people who weren't necessarily magical or witches, but they were just living their lives. They
Yes.
were doing political things. And those people are our saints, our martyrs. We need to remember them and take inspiration from them. In witchcraft, we work with the ancestors. And so I call these people the rainbow dead, and they are still available to us. We can call upon the spirit of Alan Turing. We can call upon, Matthew Shepard,
Yes.
and so many others to help us in this fight, to empower us, to make us feel whole, to recognize our power, and that we too are holy, and that queer sex is holy.
Hmm.
If it's consensual with adults, and this is what we want to do, it's holy and it's powerful. And if it
Yes.
wasn't powerful, they wouldn't be trying to make it illegal.
That is so absolutely accurate and so very true. And, this also goes for sex of any kind. All sex is holy. All sex should
Absolutely.
be considered powerful in all
Yeah.
regards. It's
if
not
it's if it's
just
between
queer
legal,
sex or straight sex, it's
if
all of
you're
the above.
of legal age, if you're of legal age and it is enthusiastically consensual, then it is absolutely holy.
Yes.
And it can be hot and primal too. That doesn't
Yes.
take away from its holiness. In fact, that's what we want. You want this marriage of these two forces, right? And that's what we want. So but also The Satyr's Kiss is also about moving outside of the heterosexual paradigm. This isn't about balancing male and female energies.
Hmm.
This is about, if we want to do a polarity, it could be projective, receptive, but it doesn't have to be assigned a gender. And that's something too that often happens in Western magical traditions, including modern paganism, is often things get reduced to a gender, which is really a misunderstanding of gender,
Hmm.
because sex and gender are not the same thing. But like one of the things out of witchcraft that I love, little rituals, is blessing the wine by putting the blade into the chalice. And so many people are so wrapped up in, oh, this represents penis and vagina. No, it doesn't. It's a blade in a cup. Get over it. It doesn't have to be, a penis and a vagina. We don't have to think so literally. It's projective receptive. It's about two forces coming together in ecstasy. It doesn't need to be equated to bodies and plumbing. Come on. I'd like to think we could do better now. We need to evolve beyond that.
It's 2022. We need to evolve beyond that.
Absolutely. Because if we don't evolve beyond it, we're dead. So, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And so we need to wake up. We need to claim these rituals as our own, redefine them. In my version of a queer craft, the great rite is absolutely something that queer people can do, and not just a couple. I have exercises, sex magic exercises for individuals and couples, but also for groups, because that should be just as holy as anything else. If it's consensual adults, then absolutely. Why can't you have more than just two people involved? If that's not your thing, then that's not your thing. You don't have to do it. And also, I will say, if you don't want to incorporate sex, into your craft, you don't have to. And even in my book, yes, I have a big chunk on sex magic, but that's not the whole thing. And I also talk about ways in which you can do these rituals and spells in a non-sexual way. Because you know what? Asexual people exist and they're valid.
Yes, they are valid. And it's one of those things that you should always look at what suits you and your magical practice best.
Absolutely.
You don't have to take all of Storm's advice. You don't have to take anybody who has ever written anything down advice. You can do you in whatever way that you feel most comfortable. Your magic is yours. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise, because that's just somebody trying to control you.
Yes, Pagan. Yes, absolutely. And I even say in the book that I'm working toward a quote unquote queer craft, but that's going to be different for everybody. Don't just take what I'm doing and then copy it. Although if it works for you, sure, you could use that as a jumping off point, perhaps. But what I'm hoping to do is to instill inspiration in people, for them to find their own queer ancestors and their own ways of working with them. And hopefully this book will inspire that inner work in people to form their own and feel centered in their own power.
I think that is absolutely so incredible. So everybody, if you haven't already bought a copy of Satyr's Kiss, now is that time that I'm going to tell you, go buy a copy, because I promise you that it is an incredible read. Even if you are somebody who is not queer, it is still an incredible read. It is something that I think everybody can get something out of, no matter what walk of life that you're in. You will find something that is incredible and meaningful in it. It's an empowering book in every possible way. All of Storm's books are empowering in every possible way. Let's just be honest.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. They definitely come from the heart.
And it shows.
I haven't written
anything really does.
On a frivolous level, but I think a lot about these things and what I'm trying to offer, to the public. And I've certainly caught a lot of flack, for it too. And that's to be expected. But, and I'm not saying that everything I write is perfect. Nothing I've written is perfect, but it's definitely, the intent is, and I'm hoping that the impact will match that intent. So I'm very hopeful that people will get something out of the Satyr's Kiss and the Witch's Name and all of my other books. But yeah, I'm just hopeful that people will be able to get something out of it. And in my own humble way, I'm hoping to help elevate, the conversation and remind people that, we, especially with the Satyr's Kiss, that we as queer people and we as queer men, we have a place, and our place is our own. We don't have to be guests in somebody else's religion. We can have our own, and we can step in our own power and feel good about that. And that's okay. And if we want to participate in, more mainstream, more heterosexist or heterocentric rather, practices, that's fine too, as long as we recognize that we don't have to. that it is valid for us to form our own religion, because heterosexual people did. Somebody started
Yes.
it way back when, so why can't we do the same thing?
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. So yes, definitely check those out. And if you're somebody who is not able to buy a copy of the book, please go request a copy at your local library. Support your libraries,
Yes.
everybody, please, because libraries need love. Not only that, they don't cost you anything. All you get to do
Right.
is check out a copy of the book. If they don't have a copy, they will find a copy or buy a copy, one of the two. All you have to do
Yep.
is request
Yep.
it. So
Please do. Please
please,
do.
please support your libraries if you are not able to buy a copy. So this has been such an empowering and amazing conversation. And I hope that everybody who listened to this, you got something out of it. I hope that if the very least we sparked a fire in you to help you go out there and fight the good fight, because that's literally what it's going to be. There is nothing but us trying to make it better from here on out, because that's basically it. It's this is our new survival. So
Yes.
definitely do what you can in whatever way that you can, but do something. Whether it be write a letter, whether it be call your senators, whether it be participating in a protest, whether it be some hexing, do something. And if you want more about activism and you want to learn more about it, definitely check out the link in the description for the Revelator Pioneer program. There's going to be a nice little link in there. We talk about everything from self-sustainability with homesteading to activism to survivalism. It's got it all. So check that out. Storm, thank you so much for being here as always. I love having you on the show. You and I could just talk for hours, which we always do, and I love it all the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on, and especially today of all days. Thanks for letting me ramble on with my anger, because
Yes.
I think that's necessary too. We need that righteous anger, and we need to share it, but we can't get poisoned by it.
No.
So again, we have to take breaks, but let's not get complacent.
No, we
The
cannot get
time to act
complacent.
is now.
Yes. All right, everybody, take care of yourselves. Be safe, be kind to yourselves, and be kind to others, and fight the good fight. And we will see you all next week. Bye, everybody.
Blessed be.